Ad Astra is written and directed by James Gray, and this movie follows a man named Roy McBride, a very successful astronaut who is sent on a mission to find his father. Over 25 years ago, his father embarked on a separate mission to Neptune and has since disappeared. James Gray is back after the release of his 2016 film, The Lost City of Z, a movie that, although received its fair share of critical acclaim, it was by far one of the biggest box office bombs of that year. But Gray has returned with another script that he has written, also about exploration, this time not into the Amazon, but into space. And like The Lost City of Z, this is another movie about ambition and obsession towards that sense of exploration. We have Roy McBride, portrayed by Brad Pitt, who is constantly in a state of longing and wishing to be among the stars, which is an idea that is reaffirmed by this movie's title, Ad Astra, which literally means in Latin, to the stars, which is an idea that I feel Brad Pitt is able to convey incredibly well in this film. I thought his performance was fascinating throughout this entire movie, because what you have is a character who is very matter-of-fact and very mission-oriented, which in doing so, I feel runs the possibility of coming off cold or dull, but I think he plays with this idea really delicately and with such subtlety, and seeing where his character grows to at the end of this film, it was really difficult not just to stay completely glued to what was happening on screen. And ushering him along in this film is not only the deft direction by James Gray, who, by the way, works magic in this film, but it's also the immaculate cinematography by Hoyt van Hoytma, who brings the same level of incredible, gorgeous sensibilities that he brought to films like Her, Dunkirk, Let the Right One In, as well as Interstellar, the latter of which being the most obvious in this film. This film is an absolute treat to look at from start to finish. I mean, I was practically salivating watching this movie because of how gorgeous it was. I mean, the One Perfect Shot page on Twitter would have an absolute field day with this movie. And to assist in this movie looking as gorgeous as it does, I mean, the production design in this film really should be applauded. There's a sequence in this movie that takes place on Mars, and nearly every single scene in this sequence is just completely breathtaking. And visually, this film does something else that I really loved, and that is every time the setting of this film changes, so does the cinematography. When our characters go to the moon, they utilize a lot of white in this film. When they go to Mars, the film has this very warm tone to it, and when they go to Neptune, a very cool tone, and so on. And thankfully for this film, this movie is not just looks. Narratively speaking, the story of this film is really well done and is filled with great commentary about today's society and the kind of attitude that we tend to have about issues that are frankly staring us right in the face. There's a great sequence in this movie that takes place on the moon, and it reminded me of something that would be ripped straight out of a movie from the late 1950s and the early 1960s. The way this film was able to encapsulate the very consumer-centric society that we are, as well as the way that we perceive space travel in the future, it reminded me of something like From the Jetsons, only way more or less optimistic about the future. In fact, this film has a lot to say about humanity and society throughout this entire movie, not just this one scene. This is a film that is practically pleading to its audience, and I thought it was very well done. With that being said, though, I think towards the end of this film is where this movie comes off a bit heavy-handed in the way that it goes about delivering its message. This film reaches a certain point where instead of whispering to the audience what this film is about, it felt more closely like it was screaming its message through a bullhorn. Films made within the genre of science fiction have and will continue to reflect the society that they were crafted in. Movies like The Forbidden Planet, 2001: A Space Odyssey. There are even films that have come out this year that deliver on some pretty high concept science fiction filmmaking with movies like High Life, which means this isn't a foreign concept of a science fiction film trying to plead to its audience in delivering a socio-political message. So I'm not so sure why this film decided to carry on the way that it does, quite excellently, I might add, only in the last 6 minutes or so to practically scream at the audience exactly what this movie is about, because it does that almost exactly, which does result in an ending that did feel incredibly neat and clean, and I think I would have preferred a bit more ambiguity. There's a shot towards the end of this film that I think would have been the perfect place to just cut to black. No, it may not have offered 100% resolution to what happens, but I think what happens after that, it doesn't really matter. It's inconsequential to the themes of the movie, because audience members who do like this film should be able to infer, at least in their own mind, what will or might happen next. The film is not about what happens after this shot, so I'm not so sure why this film felt the need to continue when it did, even though it could have just ended right there. The character has learned what he needs to learn, and if the audience understands that, cool. If they don't, that's fine too, because it's not the filmmaker's job to take the audience by the hand and tell them exactly what this movie is about. The film has essentially already done that. It's just up to the audience to decipher what its meaning is. Again, look at 2001: A Space Odyssey, a movie that came out over 50 years ago, and still to this day, people are debating on what that movie's meaning actually is. Which, by the way, if you haven't seen my discussion that I had with my buddy Chris Stuckman, make sure you click the link in the description and watch that video. I would greatly appreciate your support. Ad Astra is a film with incredibly high highs. From a technical level, this film is immaculate. The performances, the cinematography, the editing, the music choices, some of the best that I have seen in a movie this year. And this film is told so excellently with a wonderful script from James Gray. However, I think if he would have gone back to the drawing board on the last 5 or so pages of his screenplay, I think this film would have been near perfect and probably one of my favorite films of the year, even higher on my list than it already is. So did you guys see Ad Astra? What did you think about it? Leave your thoughts and opinions down below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you liked today's video. And if you did, you can click on the link down below where you can subscribe to my channel to see more movie reviews and movie related things. Again, guys, thank you so much for watching and see you next time.